friend of mine and has met Carrie today. And more importantly, he is the brother of my old drummer.
The drummer brother.
Alex Woods, and that's who we're here to talk about today, hopefully.
Absolutely.
So welcome and thank you.
Nice to be here. I am very excited in many ways to talk about death and Al.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe start with just telling us a bit about Alex?
Sure. So he was my older brother. I am 5 years younger than Al, and he was always this sort of mythical drummy figure in my life. So bit of a daredevil, I would say, in his youth, and would always just kind of just be very much living in the moment. I think that's probably a good thing to talk about. He definitely was a guy who would just kind of think about it later and probably do it now.
Yes, throw caution to the wind.
I remember phoning him up and said, "What are you doing today?" "Oh, I'm just mountain boarding down the Malverns."
Oh, awesome.
"Oh, you don't own a mountain board?" "So I do today." That kind of chap, But, kind soul, definitely. Probably the rubberiest cheeks known to man.
Yes, my sister's just texted me and said, "Pint glass in his mouth, Alex," and I'm just talking to Carrie about it.
I think that's what people remember the first thing about him, is that the guy with the pint in his
mouth. We put pegs on his neck once.
Yeah, I think
some people do just have that real stretchy skin, don't they?
Yeah, I think we actually probably went for the record of the amount of pegs on his face. I think it's probably,
I do remember something about that.
Yeah,
good.
Peg face, I don't know.
So obviously I've never met you before,
no.
And I've never met Alex. So can you tell us and the listeners just a bit about you? Just about what you do and what you do now, and then we'll go back to Alex.
So, like my brother, I am a drummer as well, mainly because of him, I would suppose. He's definitely the influence in that. I'm an ex-primary school teacher as well, and have recently, since having children and life getting a bit busier, gone into sort of 3D printing and making masks and scully things and
Dreadboi Studios.
Dreadboi, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm quite enjoying the journey. It's very new, but it's very kind of exciting. I'm an artist at heart.
Yeah.
Is that where the emphasis is on the ex-primary school?
Yeah.
Gone back into the arts?
Yes, it's sort of, they're always sold there. You can do both, art and teaching. It's all the same. You think?
No, it's not.
No, it's really not.
When little loveys are not so nice, are they?
The loveys are lovely, but the red tape's a bit red.
Yeah.
For my liking. But yeah, I'm definitely enjoying this journey of the art stuff. It's obviously doesn't pay as well, but hey, that's what it is.
Something to say about doing something you love, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being creative is totally different to being stuck in a
I
9 to 5 job. You must know that.
God, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think soul food, isn't it? When you suddenly something feeds you, nourishes your brain and your soul. It's important to follow.
Yeah. And Alex was very much, obviously, other than a drummer, he was into his photography and, like you've just said, mountain boarding and anything else he could have a go at.
He's the kind of person that would pick up anything and would just suddenly be able to be a master of it. I remember my dad having an accordion once for Christmas, and you think, well, that's a lovely sound, isn't it? Then Al picks it up and he's suddenly like an hour later playing a tune. Or
that's amazing.
He'd play piano. Oh yeah, I think he figured out My Immortal by Evanescence in in an hour or something. He's definitely a very musical talent that can just pick anything up.
Did you always look up to him? Was he always a bit of an idol?
In a way, no. He'd always look up to me.
Physically?
I think physically. Because I used to study martial arts and stuff as well, and he'd always say, "Oh, get my little brother on you," and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, obviously you'd look up to your siblings, and my sister's older as well, and there's quite a gap. I'm 7 years younger than my sister and 5 younger than my brother, so I was always the little baby brother, and then suddenly I became 6'3".
The big baby brother.
Oh God,
yeah.
I think we used to joke. We used to have hand me up clothes and stuff.
Everything he wore was just baggy, wasn't it? So kind of everybody would fit into it.
Definitely the baggiest trousers known to man, I think.
Yeah.
That's good.
So what's the first thing that you think about when you think about death?
Right, I like a finality, I suppose, is probably what I think of. That it's like the end of this cycle of the body, which is quite an interesting thought in the sense that what happens, isn't it? Like obviously someone's dead, they're just not there. And I'm sure we'll go on to sort of what I think happens to soul stuff and that sort of stuff. But in terms of death, I think it's a bit of a final point, and a bit of a full stop on life.
And did you happen to know what Alex's views were on that?
No, to be honest, we never really had a conversation on it, but I'd imagine he'd be along the same sort of lines. I can't imagine that he would think of anything more than just, that's it.
Yeah.
That might be just that for the full stop. I think we're quite aligned, I think, on that sort of view.
Yeah. And what about the rest of your family? Is that the general kind of feeling in the family? Because it's sometimes quite challenging, isn't it, to have different views especially if you've come from a religious background or religious schooling. Or
it's quite a funny one. I remember as kids we used to go to sort of church on Christmas Eve and stuff like that. So but I imagine, I'm not speaking for my family necessarily, but definitely would say that it's less religious as we're getting on and older. Not that we're religious, but sort of the view on it is it's harder to talk about, with others. But I would say that probably we're all quite fairly similarly aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think religion definitely is taking more of a back seat for our generation and maybe the ones that are coming up. Yeah, definitely for me, I grew up Catholic, so like my mum and that were probably obviously more religious than me and my brother and stuff would be, so it just sort of seems to peter out, doesn't it?
I think people have more of an awareness about, they don't want to say that they're atheists particularly. I'm not talking broadly here, but there was this movement, wasn't there, I'm staunch atheist, but I think now people are like, do you know what, I'm just open to different ideas, whether they're like an ascribed religion or not. Like a lot of people are getting into this idea of energies and things like that, which I find very interesting. And it kind of sits quite well with me anyway. I just think,
it's like leaving it to the universe type thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'd always kind of identify as a sort of agnostic, sort of like, I'm not, I'm not big-headed enough to know what happens after, but I'm also sort of, I'm up to the idea of.
It's the fence. Life, I'm going to sit on it.
But, let's find out. Let's find out what's going to happen.
I wouldn't die on that fence,
So, what was your first experience? I know obviously you lost Alex, and that is a massive, massive loss, and I can't even imagine how that must have felt. But what was your first experience of death growing up?
Pets mainly. I used to have a hamster called Houdini, which
Houdini?
It was actually called Nibbles, but it literally escaped like a magician, and then we obviously found it, and I was a bit interested in how the cat found it and those sorts of stuff. And
his mouth.
Wow.
Yeah, so pets and things like that growing up. But I think ours obviously the big one.
Had you experienced any family members?
Not
or close.
I wouldn't say close family members. Which is kind of lucky in a way. It's a funny thing to think of luck, but no, relatively death free from up to that point.
Death free.
Wow. Sounds like a really bad commercial, doesn't it?
So for you, we've just discussed how you're lucky in some ways that hadn't, because lots of people by the time they're in their mid-20s, whatever, lost a grandparent or a family friend or something like that. But for you, it was your brother. And the first significant death. So do you feel okay talking to us about that?
Absolutely fine.
Can you, how did you take it? Can you even remember?
I can remember minute by minute, to be honest. It's in one of those points that kind of, it's almost like an out-of-body experience when you kind of find out that kind of, the news. It's quite a strange one. So I was actually out at the time. I was having physiotherapy and came back to the house and, this is interesting, what's going on? Obviously mum and dad sort of obviously were telling me what had happened and stuff, and I just remember this feeling of just obviously disbelief, and just almost like it was a bit like a film being acted out or something. Like my body definitely coped with a get out of the brain kind of view it from almost a third person kind of view, and it was quite surreal, but it was a kind of just a very odd moment that
do you think
the body was.
Do you think that is like a human coping mechanism? I think it is. I think when we're faced with great trauma or, a car accident or anything, I think that our bodies have a way of sort of, like you've said, like we're removed from it. Yeah. Or the other scenarios where people just shut down, don't speak at all.
Sure.
Yeah. It's like protection mode, isn't it?
Yeah. I think in a way, and because obviously I wasn't the initial point of contact, if you like. So obviously he lived in Malvern, and we didn't see each other every day anyway. So it's kind of like another stage removed in that sort of sense. And so then sort of having been found, and then having been told, obviously the police come around, don't they? And they sort of inform the next of kin, and then they had to then inform me. It was almost like passing it around and stuff. So it kind of felt a bit that I was almost third party in a sense anyway. But I mean, obviously it doesn't make it any less traumatic, but it kind of, the initial feelings, I think it was about 4 or 5 hours since I was out that my parents found out and stuff. So it was kind of a bit of a time, which I guess for them must have been pretty awful, you know, to have to hold that in, and you know, and kind of, obviously it's not the thing you want to phone someone up necessarily if you're going to see them. So it's an interesting bit of sort of time distance, you know.
Yeah. And do you think that feeling stayed with you for a number of days or weeks or even longer? Yeah,
I mean, you know, I didn't like feel like I wanted to cry or like get that emotion out until the actual funeral, which obviously was quite not like necessarily a long time, but it certainly wasn't an immediate, like, weeks after sort of thing.
Did you feel like you were in shock before that? It was almost like disbelief.
I don't know. It's almost like they just thought he was away. I hadn't seen him, and you have me on, sort of thing. It's a bit of a joke, but obviously my coping mechanism clearly was just to kind of separate from it a bit. Which obviously there's merit in that in some senses, but obviously it obviously comes flooding back, and it's only really recently, since having my own children, and it's, you know, it's been a long time now, sort of 2009 to now. So it's had a fair. So it's a big milestone, isn't it, when you pass his 40th birthday, or when you think, oh, well, you know, I've passed his age when he died, and things like that. So that they're the really traumatic days for me, when you sort of think like, oh God, like he would have been, or having my son and my daughter, and then, oh, you wouldn't, like, they talk about Uncle Alex and stuff, and you know, and like, you know, we sort of wave at the hills when we see him and stuff, and my kids always ask about him, and it's just my way of keeping him, you know, alive and in the family.
And so you do talk with your children about Alex?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because I think they, you know, he would have been the mad Uncle Al, you know,
oh my gosh,
in a good way. Not
they would have loved it. Yeah, it sounded like they would have loved him.
Would have been like, right, you know, you're going to go out with Uncle Al, and I'll phone my brother up, and I'll sort of say,
here's some crash helmets.
I'll be like, you know, I don't want to know what you're doing, but please make my children come home safe and sound. You know, just that's what I need to know.
Yeah. So I suppose, you know, they feel like they're missing out as well, don't they, on that special?
Yeah. Well, they've got uncles and aunts on one side, and you know, and we still talk about Uncle Al and stuff, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's the sense of, I think they'd had a lot of fun with him, you know, and that. So it's,
once you did finally sort of start to grieve and cry, did it take you sort of, did that period last for a long time, that upset, because you'd held it in, or you just hadn't?
That's an interesting question. I wouldn't say I cried any more than I would have, you know, but I guess it's the intensity, isn't it, and the couple of weeks after that, you're milling it all through your brain, of like it's often, it's almost like the issue and the hurt comes from the missing kind of potential of what could have been, for me anyway, and like, oh, you would have loved that, or your Uncle Al would have loved that, or you know, that, you know, potentially having children of his own, and that experience and stuff, as well as my kids having, like, I've got cousins, but like more cousins, and
I think losing a sibling is like the only person that has been with you for your whole life.
Yeah.
Apart from your mum and dad.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like, I would be thinking that in the future, sort of, when my mum and dad aren't here anymore, he's your oppo, isn't he? And if he's not here, those are the times that you sort of would be thinking. Yeah, I mean, it's what you've lost.
I think it's like, not that we weren't a close family, but it definitely brought us all back, like, really close again still. So we all still see each other very regularly and stuff, and very close to my sister and my parents and stuff now, and obviously that's a wonderful thing, you know. So it's kind of like, you know, sad that not that it wouldn't have happened, but I you know, it's hard to say that it's more intense, and we see each other more because of that. But you know, we certainly have a good relationship.
So you're close with them now.
Yeah,
and how are they?
They're great in some ways, you know, and other ways not. You know, it's.
And do they share your kind of philosophy with keeping Al's memory alive? Did they talk about him much?
Yeah, it's still obviously quite sore, you know. My parents obviously have their own coping mechanisms and things that, like, you know, but it's certainly a hard thing. I guess it's hard to lose your son, obviously, and you know, that's
and
still very
raw. As a parent
raw.
now, you would know.
Yeah, I can't imagine
it. You can't even fathom it, can you?
You know, I'd rather, like, take me any day.
Yeah.
So obviously to get through that, and you know, and still to have to kind of like work and live a life, and you know, and carry on. You know, it's testament to the strength, you know. How, like, I've always said it's not something you get over, you kind of get used to it, you know. So I kind of feel that way. So I guess they're still doing the same sort of thing. obviously we always make a point of raising a glass on his birthdays and talk about things like that. Obviously it's always going to be sore, I think, for a long time. Not that you ever really get used to it.
Does the thought of death scare you?
No, I wouldn't say so. I guess it's the feeling of how and when is the issue, and what trauma it might cause for others, in a sense, like thinking of others in that sense. But I guess the actual act of dying, you don't want a long and protracted death, obviously, and it's the fear of the pain and that sort of stuff potentially. But the actual act of it, it's sort of, I don't think I'll truly know until it's the point, But right now, I don't think, oh my God, what about it, It's an interesting question.
I sometimes wonder, what do you think about this? Do you think that we come into this life and our time is up when our time is up? Or do you think that, obviously there's situations that cause like a death.
Yeah.
But I sometimes think, we have people who come into the mortuary who've smoked 20 fags a day all their lives and drank whiskey every day, and they live to their 90 odd.
Yeah.
And then you have people who live a fairly healthy life, blah blah blah, and they die at 40.
Yeah.
Do you think that your time is your time?
So,
which is in like you've got a number on your head?
Yeah, like sort of
I
like when
think
you're born, you've got
very
the
interesting
expiry
concept.
date on your bottom.
Yeah.
Bam. That's when you're going to go.
I know I talked to Emma about sort of philosophical sort of stuff, and we suddenly were like, oh, I studied philosophy too, and things like this, and that was quite an interesting. I actually did like the ethics of death and stuff at university and things, because I was so interested in, just what other people think about this sort of stuff. I think I would have probably done it anyway if I didn't die. But things like, there's a Zenish concept in the karate world that's there's no allotted time, and it's sort of I quite like that. It's almost a bit like a cool version of Carpe Diem, that you don't know what's going to happen, but sort of live for the moment. Obviously, it's very much focused on living for now and what's going on. And then there's other ones about sort of the grid systems in life, a bit like the Matrix, where certain events are doomed to happen. But like I guess it's like Final Destination, which is kind of cool. So I don't know. I mean, I think obviously everyone's going to die at some point, which is like, well, duh. Like, it's worth talking about. Excuse me. It's worth talking about. So it's an interesting question, but it's. I don't think things are necessarily allotted, but I think certain things are maybe inevitable.
Okay, for certain people. Yeah.
But like you say, I know.
I just thought that.
Yeah, nice.
People that are so, like you say, smoked 50 a day and just absolutely fine diet, like a happy old person, and then like people that die suddenly at 27 or whatever. It's. And no matter what, maybe exercise, you hear super fit people, don't you, sort of dying on the weights bench, Obviously the body is...
You see that all the time.
We get people who are really fit and cark it on a Peloton normally. Go buy Peloton.
We'll edit that. No endorsements there, Karen.
But in a way, I guess the body is a thing, isn't it? It's made, it's a working machine in a sense, so... If things aren't quite aligned properly, then it's a bit of an inevitability in that way.
I think we've got natural predisposition to certain things, haven't we? Like you've said, you can have two people who both smoke like chimneys their whole life, and one will cark it due to lung cancer and the other won't. They'll just carry on because something in their DNA is going, well, I'm not bothered about smoking, I'm just going to crack on. And and this is it, I think, that's not an excuse for living like a really hedonistic life.
She says.
But it is also a freeing concept, isn't it? Because if we all decide, right, we're going to drink only green tea, we're going to run every other day but only on soft surfaces because of our joints, and really overthink everything, you can still be run over by a bus, can't you? It's like there's got to be some sense in living and enjoying
I mean, what good is life if you don't live?
Absolutely. Sharing experiences is what it's about, I think.
Do you want to ask that question?
Okay, so we've touched on this. We know that you're okay.
Just a bit coffee, I'm all right.
We know that
you're
not religious. We've talked about you being agnostic.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Have you got a concept of what you think happens when we die?
I think so. So, again, part of the philosophy side of me, they obviously measure the body and things, and it's a bit lighter after death. And,
it's my favourite one. This
is. It's quite interesting. So obviously, in terms of the soul leaving the body, I'm a big believer in things like soul clusters and spirit and energy and stuff, where, you kind of meet your friend that you've never met before, and you think, oh my god, like it's like I've known you forever, and it's kind of like I've read a few. I can't remember what the book is now. I have to dig it out. But the way it talks about soul clusters.
Tell us what a soul cluster is. 'Cause I'm not sure that I know the concept.
It's like a kindred spirit.
Kind of thing.
Okay,
Like obviously it's about like energy, isn't it? And obviously humans are effectively an energy source, and you know the heat source and that sort of stuff. So I don't know how far back it goes, but in terms of like the stars and things, I sound like a right hippie. But that's a good thing. I think spirit kind of finds its own parts of itself. You know, so. You know, like your sense of self, and you think, oh my god, like you're my best friend, but I don't know who you are, and I need to know this person. It's almost like your soul and your body is trying to like reclaim parts of its soul cluster.
Oh, I'm into this.
I like this a lot, yeah.
You know, which is quite a cool concept. It kind of brings meaning to me when I sort of, I don't know, you're on a gig somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, this guy's amazing. Like I really like, we're like the same person, and it's almost
like that instinctual kind of or that immediate, almost, it's almost like falling in love with somebody, isn't it? But it's like immediate.
With a friend at university, you know, we both had dreadlocks, and we were a bit of a cool rock club, and sort of think, I know this guy, and we're still really good mates now, you know. And it was like literally like almost like meeting myself in someone else's body, and you kind of
like you find your people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
because we all vibe with different people, don't we? You know, and you kind of met someone, and you think, oh my god, I feel like I've known you for my life, and it's almost like obviously like past lives and stuff. I'm a believer in that sort of stuff where. Like the souls lived before, like, you know, I kind of think I'm an old soul in sense things that phase me as much, but some people kind of have like a newer soul, and you think, like, why are you getting stressed so much about that? Like, it doesn't matter.
You're too modern.
Yeah.
Chill out.
You know, back in Rome, this wouldn't have been a problem.
Off with his head.
So yeah, it's a soul cluster. I have to just like dig out what it's from, but it's I think I really like that concept.
I think you probably inspired us to do some research. I think should we do our research and maybe do a little episode on that.
Soul cluster.
I want a soul cluster.
That's nice as well.
Yeah.
A cluster of souls, you know.
I think sometimes that you actually connect with people on another level that you don't think you're going to connect with.
Yeah.
I really like it when I meet somebody who's not the same as me, different, and like you just get on really well.
Yeah, we shouldn't be friends, but
yeah,
you know.
I quite like. I like the thing. Yeah, I quite like the thing where I put my hands up to it. I meet somebody, I think, not for me. No, absolutely not. And then you realise you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my
god,
this
to
person.
Start with.
Yeah. This person is so incredible and so likeable. Like, I don't want to like you, which really says more about me than it does about you. And then you find that you're so drawn to them in every way. And then you start talking, you share all the same philosophy about life. And
yeah. You think about like memories and stuff as well, like the experience of Al and the Tardy Big and the gigs we used to do. So obviously that was Al's world, really.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I worked there because Al did for a bit. But like when we did the reunion gig and stuff like that with Karma and you know, all of his like old friends, it's just like Al's here, and like it's almost like the walls and the memory has this sort of soul kind of bit.
You bring all those people together that knew Al, and you're going to have the feeling of
that's
him
beautiful.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. So you think that when you die, your soul goes off?
I think
potentially to another person, maybe.
Well, I think energy is recycled. You know, so I'm quite careful with the word soul, because I don't really know what that is, or obviously, but I think it's maybe a sense of the ID, the person, you know,
Eunice.
Your ego, as Freud or whoever might say, and I think it's always trying to reclaim bits of itself and kind of, I don't know if it's not like on a journey, but it's like life is a journey of experience and things. So maybe your body's trying to, you know, it's a vehicle for your soul to find things and experience things and that sort of stuff, which is quite a cool concept.
That is cool. They sort of portray that in movies sometimes, don't they? Like when someone dies and there's always someone born.
Yeah.
So like it's like
an exchange.
Their soul's gone.
Cosmic exchange.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that kind of like Buddhism, isn't it? Like the reincarnation and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we go from like, you know, earwig, dog. Like,
we're ranking up.
Yeah, well, it depends how well you've done.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
I'm an old soul, but I was a worm.
Yeah, I can do the worm.
Those are the days, you know. Yeah, so you know, I don't think that's like necessarily a hierarchy. I mean, probably just blasphemed all sorts of Buddhism, pissed load of Buddhist stuff. Oh, that's not the right thing.
Yeah.
But you know, from my understanding, you know, I think, I don't know. I feel like when you talk to someone, you think, well, yeah, you've got a lot to learn. You know, maybe that's a slightly newer soul. Don't know. Interesting.
Anyone under 20, that is.
Yeah.
Joking. All the uni students, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
What about spiritualists and mediums? Have you ever had any experience with them?
Yes.
And what do you think of them?
This is an interesting thing. So when Al did pass away, my partner at the time was very into spiritual stuff. She really amazing, you know. So we had an angelic ascension, which is where the your chakra points in your body kind of alleviate two above your head, and it's about the connection to the afterlife and stuff like that.
Wow.
Which is quite cool.
Love this.
Yeah, that's totally new to me.
I don't.
Yeah.
But I know about chakra, like Reiki type things.
So there are two above.
Well,
there's like the purpley one that's like mind, and then
there's
white.
like a connection. It's like a higher level of focus and consciousness and stuff. And supposedly there's another one that's kind of the kind of track to the souls that aren't here and stuff like that. You know, so it's quite interesting. I mean, at the time, I've always kind of been into that sort of stuff, you know. But I genuinely did feel like his. Quite some people might be like, that's silly, but like Al was there at the time, and it was kind of, you know, we all felt we had someone with us and stuff like that, you know. But I mean, I think I've always been an old soul in that sense, and felt like I can sort of, the person doesn't have to be here to feel them and stuff like that, you know. So yeah, this kind of angelic ascension and stuff was a bit of a, you know, you cut your ties to various things that are holding you back, you know, and you suppose you ask all the angels to help.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure how far.
That's quite a cathartic experience, though, if nothing else.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
A freeing experience, which actually, when you're in grief, you really need. You've got to find whatever tools are going to work.
I think it was definitely a tool to explore. You know, I'm not saying like I'm not, you know, meditating every day and asking the angels for help. You know, so I think they're just, again, like the name for God is in my head. It's just the name for energy and the being and whatever you call that thing. You know, so I think maybe like the angels aren't necessarily like dudes in robes with big swords and whatever, you know. It's just a name for maybe like that connection or the cutting of something or some help, you know, like a vehicle again to help the mind.
So other than that experience, have you ever been to see a spiritualist or a medium that has, you know, given you another kind of, there's another realm somewhere?
Not really. No, I think my experience of that sort of stuff probably comes from either too much reading of funky things and philosophy things, and maybe films, obviously. Different things have different experiences, don't they? And you know, so yeah, I've never seen a spiritualist or a medium, because you know, I just think of like your classic Derek Gore, like talking to someone. Is there a John, Jim, James? You know, that sort of
You've
stuff.
lost a man. I mean, a woman.
Yes, they had hair.
They're old. No, they're young.
You know, that's just tricking people.
Actually, only kidding.
You know.
It's this guy.
You've lost them. You're sad.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really. Everyone's lost them.
And the thing is, we've talked about this with other people, haven't we? There's so many charlatans that will prey upon you. But then I think people do, you know, have genuine experiences as well, which we're always interested in. Would you ever go and see one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be up for I believe in like the spirits and ghosts and stuff, which is great. But I don't necessarily believe they're walking around, but I think there's like traces of energy possibly, or like, you know, like you go to somewhere like Warwick Castle and like, we get a spooky feeling. And but I think that's because like I think rooms hold energy and that sort of stuff.
Like a residual energy.
If these walls could talk, that kind of thing.
I think that's probably the logical side as well as the spiritual side kind of meet, you know. Excuse me.
You. Full of cold.
Delicious. I'm not dying, I promise.
Please don't do that.
Not live on camera. What was I going to ask you now? So I know you said you were a teacher before, primary school teacher. Yeah. Did you ever have to talk about death with the kids? Did you ever have any experience with the kids?
Sadly, yeah, quite a lot actually. I was working in an area in Worcester where it's very high social deprivation and things, and you know, lots of obviously parents with issues and things around kind of, you know, the naughtier side of life, and yeah, we had a few parents sort of die of various things over the years. I guess what happens if you stay in the same place for a long time, you obviously have to kind of coach the children through lots of grief. Many amazing people working at the school that help the kids through.
And what about the actual curriculum? Because we've discussed before that, you know, grief, trauma, loss, it isn't really discussed in our culture at all until it's necessary, and even then it really relies on, like you've just said, people who are equipped, who happen to be there, who are brought in for that purpose.
Absolutely.
But was there anything within the sort of guidelines of the school to help you deal with that?
I wouldn't say so. I think not in terms of a curriculum view. Obviously, things certainly come in at a certain time. But again, at primary school, I wouldn't say there's anything about sort of.
And isn't it strange because they learn about, my two are learning about the life cycle of a butterfly or whatever it is, and I think we probably need to talk a bit more about what happens when they die.
Yeah.
To give them a skill set that they're going to need.
I think this is an interesting question, isn't it? With what happens after is never discussed really, because I guess it. Yeah, you touch on like I imagine Catholic schools and things would do the kind of the heaven and the afterlife and things like that. Which maybe fits some, but obviously the true picture of a school, there's multi-faith, there's multiculture. So,
but even from a biological point of view, I don't think it's discussed, is it, at school? The heart stops beating, end. Yeah. Which you could argue is. Yeah. You could argue, but actually, I think
I don't think
most
they want to go into stages of decomposition.
Well, maybe not that, but I think certainly like for young people, children, and young people, to understand illness. To understand what brings somebody to the point of death, because unless it's accidental, sudden, or somebody takes their own life. I mean, even that needs discussing more. There's this whole process that young children don't understand illness, that and then when it does happen in their lives, they're totally underprepared for it.
I mean,
and so are the teachers, I imagine, if they've not experienced anything themselves.
Absolutely, and a lot of teachers kind of just like are doing their best with what they've got, which is hard.
It's a hard job.
Yeah, and then going back to the point of children, I think it's the parents' role in a way to sort of not necessarily prepare the kids for death, but I mean just be honest, like you just stepped on a ladybird or something, it's dead, it's not coming back, It's like, I guess in those like micro conversations that can kind of build up over time.
Yeah.
And do you have those sorts of conversations with your own kids?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Obviously with Al, my son asks me probably every week, how did Uncle Al die or whatever, and, I just sort of say, well,
you're quite candid with him then, do you? Tell him how it is.
Yeah. Obviously we don't go into like super detail and stuff, but we sort of say, his body, unfortunately wasn't maybe made up properly, or something happened and his body stopped working, and unfortunately he's not around anymore, and because I think if you kind of use like hyperbole and like weird things all about death, then children don't really understand actually.
They actually like it factual.
It's like he's dead, he's not coming back, which it feels harsh.
Do they get sad about it? So I've noticed my two asking me questions about it. They now at ages 7 and 8 will be sad, and I have to say to them, it's okay for you to feel sad, but you can't. They'll say, I miss Nanny Julia, whatever, and I'll say you can't miss somebody you didn't know, and then I feel really mean for saying it, but. And your children are similar age, or slightly younger than mine?
Five. Seth's 5 and Sabrina's 2.
Okay, she's really little then.
Yeah, she's really little, but Seth definitely, I think, has an understanding now of it. But again, it's like you say, it's just a matter of fact,
Yeah.
We just never, excuse me, bloody coffee. Never wanted to kind of sugarcoat the fact, that you had an uncle, because obviously he's got his uncle on the other side, amazing, and it's like almost like he's maybe going to miss the potential of the next thing, so I guess that maybe the same with the children, they almost maybe miss what they might have had with their nanny. Or
I think they also they're coming into, it's not just us talking to them about it, they're coming into a time in their lives of an actual understanding of life and death a bit more, aren't they? And again, it's not discussed in any other arena in their life, is it?
I think my biggest word for my son is curiosity. I think he wants to know things and facts, and which we've obviously always encouraged, because I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Asking questions and poking and prodding and stuff. So
there's I went to a science museum. I can't remember if it's in Birmingham. I think it was, or was it at Conkers? Have you ever been to Conkers? I mean, that's like a outdoorsy place, but they've got like it's either there or it's somewhere else. They've got a section, and they actually show what happens when an animal dies, from like it limping to its death, effectively, and then it laying there and it decomposing, and they've got it like sped up,
right?
So you can see the actual stages.
That'd be great.
So I remember the kids going, oh my god, look at that! But actually, then they're like, oh, what does that? What's that bit? What's happening now?
And if they were exposed to it more, I mean, it's got to be age appropriate. I understand that. I'm not suggesting that we start showing 4-year-olds
decomposed bodies.
Let's not do that. But I think if they are exposed to it a little bit more, they're going to grow up into adults who understand it better, and then they're going to deal with it better when it inevitably happens to somebody they know and love.
And it showed then at the end of the mushrooms and things growing from
so life
from
afterwards,
the remains.
I love that concept.
It's quite nice actually. Yeah, like in a roundabout sort of
and then
way.
they ask you, "Mummy, will I turn into a mushroom?"
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
We keep you in the dark and feed you shit, darling. Yes, you will.
I think wanted to be buried underneath a tree and sort of have this like life after death kind of concept.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want.
That's what you want, yeah. It's on your...
Especially being a Woods surname, so it's kind of like, kind of fitting to go back to the trees.
Awesome, yeah. If it was all to end tomorrow, is there anything that you wish you would have done if you had more time?
That's a big question, isn't it?
It's a big one.
I mean, I always value the little things, I think, with time with people, you know, so... You know, I think if it was all, I said if it was all going to end tomorrow, I think I'd host like a massive barbecue or a big party or something and get everyone together and just share stories and things. I'll probably, get a really nice steak or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, just maybe see, I think my brain always goes back to experiences and things like that. So, things that you want to see, or, I don't know, bands that you want to see or something, or somehow... I don't know, Make-A-Wish Foundation or something, try and organise a sudden gig with somebody or something, I don't know.
You're going down the route of the old living funeral that we've been discussing.
Yeah, have you heard about a living funeral?
No, that sounds interesting.
We spoke to someone who, she's a celebrant, and she was saying that living funerals are like a thing that they're trying to get out there, where people have a funeral before they die.
Okay.
And she was saying not necessarily if they know they're poorly, just
like,
at any time.
Have a living funeral.
Just like, isn't that like what?
People can do your eulogy, you can clap them.
Yeah.
Is it This Is Your Life?
Yes,
you
come out with a big red book.
It's
fantastic.
This is your life.
It is really interesting what she was saying. Really interesting.
It's a bit narcissistic, I think, but
I mean, surely it's just a birthday party.
Yeah. And everyone go, "You're fucking great."
Yeah, you are awesome.
Yeah, if you could all just go around the room and tell me what you like about me most, and I'll just sit here and really enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I am great.
Do you want to ask that? As we're on that theme anyway.
Okay, so I know we did have a discussion beforehand before we did this, but I'm not sure whether we talked about this or not. But have you got any plans for your own funeral? And in light of the fact that you've lost your brother, and in light of the fact that you're a father, and a very clever soul, I mean, do you have a will in place? Do you know what your plans are? Have you instructed people?
This is an interesting thing. No, I don't actually have a will.
Go home and do one then.
Yes.
Make a note.
It's something I need to do and want to do. Obviously now with children and things, after obviously I wasn't expecting to die at such a young age. So like it was obviously the legal side of it's kind of messy after death. You know, it's again something nobody really talks about. With sort of probate stuff. So in terms of a funeral, I mean, I don't really care. No. To be really honest. Obviously I want people to be sad and remember the good things. So
black and a big veil.
Yeah, I want a big picture of me above my, I don't know, doing my finest robes. I don't know. So I think the funerals aren't necessarily for the person that's died, essentially. So it's amazing to celebrate the person that lived, which is great.
And you did already say that you'd like to be under a tree, so
I think
Carrie wants to go into a pod, don't you?
I think
be buried under it.
I think the whole, for me, like the body is a natural thing, going back to nature and energy going recycled into trees or mushrooms. I'm not really bothered. Decomposing foxes or that. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
Something cool. I don't know.
So you've got no special places that you'd like to be, or no special requests?
So I'll have to think of somewhere, like, I don't know, like, obviously, I like the thought in the sense of being out in the free in nature and stuff. There's no real certain place. I know I don't really want my body buried. I think I don't really, want, I don't really care about having a grave, that sort of stuff. Like Al doesn't have one, which is quite fitting for...
Was he cremated?
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was cremated and then scattered in an undisclosed location, somewhere very up high, very local.
And now we know. Would you not want to do the same?
It's this.
In the light of that,
having done one, it's quite horrible.
Yes, it goes in your mouth and the eyes.
Like, oh my god!
It's really
when the wind blows.
It's much harder to do than you think.
It's really hard to do, and it's actually quite hilarious, which is kind of fitting, isn't it? In a sense, so it's very much these sort of things are very unplanned and quite spontaneous and stuff. Which I mean, people that know me, I'm not terribly spontaneous. I'm quite risk averse, and I like to have things in order and that sort of stuff. So I don't really, but this is the kind of thing
I've
that
met my soul.
Oh, you've got a little cluster going on over there, you guys.
So I think it's quite nice just to not, like, you can't control death. It's completely, well, you can in some ways, but in other ways, like traditional death, if you like, you don't know when your time's up. So it's kind of like, up to other people how they want to remember you in a sense, I think. So in terms of funerals and plans and places, like, it's just I'm easy.
Yeah,
I'm quite easygoing, as you might be able to tell. So I don't really mind.
That's cool. I know you're like a creator and you've sort of had a change of job now and you've got Dreadboi Studios. So we were talking about starting a campaign called This is Grief, #ThisIsGrief, and Emma's been doing some photos and things. And I know you make masks.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you'd be interested in doing a bit of a collab
100%.
and do some masks on the masks that we wear as grief. So like joy, sadness.
Yeah. So the whole concept is, I found myself looking through photographs and realising that there was photographs of me laughing, photographs with me having my children, photographs of me riding a bike, photographs where I look sad, depressed, hungover, every single human facet. And I realised that when you've lost somebody, there's a moment of grief in almost every moment.
Absolutely.
And that goes along with the Sadness Chaser, which is an episode we've just done as well.
I love that concept.
Yeah, and so I love this idea, Carrie, of doing it. I
thought,
love this.
Yeah, so
because it is a mask, isn't it? You know, we are even, you know, we were talking about milestones. So the big milestones, you know, you're attending a family occasion or whatever, and that person isn't there, and we're all, it's so great, everything's so great. But somewhere lurking is that
This is grief, isn't it?
It is grief.
This is grief.
It's a bit like having a place for someone at the wedding that they would have been at. And like, you know, if that's your thing, that's fine. But it's kind of like, you know, you don't have to necessarily have this is a set picture. Look how sad we are.
Yeah.
And just because you're not doing that does not mean you're any less sad.
Absolutely.
And we still have to carry on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought like maybe we could organise some sort of collab, and then we can like get maybe our listeners could like win some masks or something.
That sounds very cool.
We'll work on that idea. We'll work on it together.
Percolate that in the back.
Yeah.
So is it almost a bit? Is it the Buddha that looks like he's neither smiling or?
Was different.
Or is that the Mona Lisa?
No, well, yeah. But they say I've said to me about the Buddha. Like you can't tell if he's smiling or sad. Yeah. And I think that's we've lost her. We've lost her.
That really tickled me.
But this goes back. I'm quite fascinated with like Japanese masks and stuff. You know, the no theatre. So some of the latest ones I'm working on are based on ghosts. Okay. Japanese sort of versions are called the yokai. Again, because I'm like, fascinated about death and things and skulls and masks and demons and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of like the theatre mask is like obviously it's a physical representation of an emotion. Because a lot of actors in the past obviously were sort of male or whatever, or female playing both parts, or so masks are that literally a metaphor and a physical thing for portraying other things. Which is why I'm fascinated by them. You know?
I think that was one of when we were discussing this. I wondered whether it was born out of loss in some way that you got interested in a way.
I think I've always been that kind of way. We like thinking about that's an interesting feeling. I think maybe it's an obsession with Jim Carrey's film The Mask.
Yeah.
Was that always that line like we all wear masks metaphorically? You know, and I was like, you're bloody right. And I was like 9 years old or something. Like yes, you are right.
I mean, you've just brushed past something that I'm just going to come back to. You've just used the word demons and that you're interested in that. Well, I don't know anything about that and it scares me a little bit. Would you like to expand on that?
Well, a demon is an interesting concept, isn't it? Because there's positive demons and some things that drive people in sort of, you know, the whole concept of yin and yang, isn't it? Like with being good and evil, that's just a bit of a viewpoint and a bit of a perspective, isn't it? Sometimes, like, not saying that all evil things are good or all good things are evil or whatever.
Well, we are both all the time.
Hence why you have certain. So
I'm thinking, you know, the film Ghost, the horrid things that crawl around, and
still
this is what I think when I think
again.
of like a demon. I think of something trying to steal your soul.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not how you're looking at it.
But no, absolutely not. But you think like a speed demon or something, you know, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, it's just I don't know, like a demon gets.
Thought we were going to find out you're part of an occult kind of thing. Wow, did not see the interview going this way.
That's slightly undisclosed, Emma. I cannot share.
Are you into horror? Do you like horror films?
Yeah, I do. Not again. I watch them all the time, but I really like classic.
You really have found a kindred spirit here.
Again, like I mean, like I say, dabble in like special effects makeup, like and stuff like that. So I've done like, again, obviously, it's much more fun to kind of, much easier, in fact, to kind of mess someone's face up with special effects makeup and stuff than it is to actually make them look beautiful.
Yeah.
And like, so all the kind
especially with a face like
mine. Your face is beautiful.
So we have got one last question for you, and we ask everybody: if you could find out when you were going to die, would you want to know?
No, I don't think I would. I think.
I love how like you were so certain.
Yeah, I mean, it's tomorrow. Like, oh Christ, I better go.
Loads
time
to
for
do.
this. I've got to do.
Make a lasagna. Like, what am I going to do? I don't know. It's I think I'd rather kind of not know and just kind of, again, it goes back to the concept. It goes back to Zen philosophy, back to my karate days. There's a thing called an akiru, which is like a moment, which is really lovely. So like you create these moments for people. As like you kind of, when you get that moment, oh my God, they've thought about me, and this moment will sum up what I'm feeling at this point in time. And it's I think having these kind of moments to share and to do is quite important. So I'd like to have more time than I've got now. So if I found out I'm dying next week, you think, well, I think personally I'd be like, what can I do for other people to make them feel better?
That's lovely.
Yeah,
that's
a
really nice way to end.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily want to know when I'm going to die, because doesn't really matter to me.
It's lucky because we don't know when you're going to die.
That's right. I was going to say, is that part of the question?
And you're going to die.
Hang on, just got to look it up. It's right at the back, Karen.
Is it Death Note? Kind of the animal, just sign here, please. Oh,
that was the disclaimer you signed on the way in.
It's tomorrow then, right?
Yeah, it's been wonderful to talk to you and really nice to meet you. And
thank you, Tom.
Nice for you guys to get together.
Yeah,
it's
really nice.
And hopefully you'll keep listening to the podcast as well.
Of course, I'm a big fan.
Oh,
I'll get you a t-shirt.
I think
yeah.
I mean,
get you a t-shirt.
Cool.
We can have one of those.
I do like the logo. Thanks. It's a lovely way to keep Al's memory alive.
Absolutely.
To Alex.
Special note.
To Alex.
To Alex.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
It's a day.